Have you ever wondered why your spiritual life seems so difficult while others appears tranquil? Have you ever felt that you are being rejected, misunderstood, or even forgotten by God? If this has been happening to you, know one thing. It is not a coincidence. It is a clear sign that you are one of God's chosen. But what no one has told you, and perhaps even your church has hidden, is that the chosen face unique spiritual pains. Pains that hurt the soul, yet also shape warriors for eternity. Today, you will discover the 5 spiritual pains that only the chosen feel. And attention, if you watch until the end, something will change within you. A powerful revelation awaits you, an answer you may have been searching for years. It is no exaggeration to say that this video could be the turning point in your spiritual life. It is unbelievable, it is shocking, and it might be exactly what you needed to hear, but that no one had the courage to tell you. Before we begin, a quick warning. More than half of the people who watch the videos on this channel are still not subscribed. Do not make that mistake. If you feel moved by this type of message, subscribe now and activate the bell, because what we are going to reveal here will prepare you for the end times, for the rapture, and for facing the invisible battles that surround your soul every day. Now take a deep breath and come with me on this journey that can change everything. Rejection as a sign of divine purpose. There are pains that cannot be understood by those who walk solely by human logic. Rejection is one of them. When someone is truly called by God, that person begins to carry invisible marks within them, spiritual marks that provoke strange reactions in others. Friends drift away, family members become distant, and even within the church, looks of bewilderment arise. But behind this distancing is something that few see, a divine purpose in action. The Bible is full of such stories. Joseph was betrayed by his own brothers. Moses, rejected by his people, and Jesus Christ, even his own, were in denial. The pain of rejection is not the end. It is the beginning of a process of separation for something greater. Jesus' cross was also a symbol of rejection and of salvation. This pain, although it may seem unfair, carries a spiritual weight that is not always visible to the naked eye. The rejected person begins to realize that their vision, their spirit, and their calling are out of the ordinary. What once made sense to the world now seems too small for a soul that has been touched by something eternal. Biblical secrets are not revealed to the complacent, but to those who have been shaken by pain. And very often, that pain comes precisely from exclusion. What the church didn't tell you is that rejection is not a flaw, it is a filter. God is filtering the environments and connections so that only what contributes to the purpose remains. Religion teaches about acceptance, but Christian doctrine shows that sometimes rejection is a confirmation. The Bible reveals that the chosen are first set apart, and this process, my friend, hurts. Therefore, when someone is rejected for living according to the teachings of Jesus, it is a sign that they are on the right path. The world hates what it cannot control. Satan uses misunderstanding as a weapon to isolate those with a divine mission. But it is precisely at that moment that the spiritual strength, unseen by others, emerges. This isolation makes room for deep biblical revelations, those that transform not only the reader, but also the way of living. Rejection, although it may seem unfair, is among the mysteries of the Bible that few understand. It is like a narrow door through which only those truly willing to bear the weight of the cross can pass. It is frightening, yes, but also unbelievable how God transforms this pain into fuel for His purpose. And when you begin to understand this, everything changes. Solitude that strengthens the spirit. The journey of those who have been called by God inevitably leads them along silent paths. Solitude, although feared, becomes a sacred companion on the spiritual path. It does not arise by chance, but as a divine tool to strengthen communion with the Most High. Jesus Christ experienced this in Gethsemane when, about to face the cross, he saw his disciples sleeping while he sweated blood in prayer. It is in that silence that the soul finds room to hear God's whisper. The Bible reveals that the deepest moments of biblical revelations come in the desert, not in the crowd. And the desert is solitary. This solitude is not punishment. It is an invitation to an intimacy that is only experienced in secrecy, as taught in Matthew 6:6, a reserved encounter forbidden to the curious. What the church often does not teach is that silence can be louder than any crowd. When everything around falls silent, it is as if the Spirit awakens to realities that were once hidden. The noise of the world distracts us from God's voice, but when solitude comes, what was once shadow becomes revelation. Angels in the Bible appeared in moments of deep solitude, like Uriel or the Archangel Michael, messengers who appear when no one else is around. It is frightening, but also surprising how God uses isolation to reveal hidden truths. Religion may value community, but Christian doctrine knows that solitude refines. It was alone that Moses went up the mountain. It was alone that John received the apocalypse. It was alone that Jesus triumphed in the desert. If you feel that no one understands you, perhaps it is because God wants only Him to understand you at this moment. Spiritual solitude is not a mistake in the journey. It is a necessary step in the biblical study of authentic faith. Many prefer to flee from this silence, filling the soul with distractions. But the chosen, they learn to remain. They understand that the absence of human voices is the perfect setting for the manifestation of the divine voice. Jesus' cross was born in silence, and anyone wishing to follow in his footsteps must understand that there is power in being alone. It is at that moment that the masks fall, that the church's lies are unmasked, and that the heart aligns with the shocking secrets of heaven. Solitude, as painful as it may be, is the seed of an unshakable faith. Internal conflict against human desires. There is a battle that no one sees, yet it consumes the heart of those who truly follow Christ. It is the conflict between the flesh and the spirit, a constant, intimate, and often exhausting war. The Apostle Paul described this honestly. "For I do not do the good I want, but the evil I do not want. This I keep on doing." Romans 7:19. The Bible does not hide this tension. On the contrary, it lays bare this internal drama as an inevitable part of the Christian walk. Those who have been touched by the teachings of Jesus feel this struggle in their very flesh. It is as if original sin tries, every day, to take control once more. This conflict is not a sign of weakness. It is living proof that the Holy Spirit is present, resisting the dominion of the flesh. Traditional religion may condemn this struggle as a lack of faith, but biblical secrets reveal the opposite. The internal battle is a clear symptom that spiritual life is pulsating within the individual. Only the living fight, the dead surrender. The chosen face desires, impulses, and temptations like anyone else, but they possess a painful awareness that they need to fight even when they are tired. Biblical study does not promise an absence of temptations. It promises grace to resist them. And it is here that many discover what the church did not tell you, that holiness is not born from perfection, but from perseverance. Satan tries to use guilt to trap God's children, but Jesus' cross is greater than any fall. This internal battle requires spiritual discernment. It is not enough to have communion. One must watch, fast, seek biblical revelations, and above all, not be deceived by the religious manipulation that tries to silence this struggle. Every victory over the flesh is a step toward the rapture. Every resistance is an act of war against hell. It is unbelievable how, even flawed, the chosen continue to stand, not by merit, but by mercy. Those who understand this stop reproaching themselves like a Pharisee and start fighting like a child of God. And when that child falls, he rises, wipes away his tears and continues on his journey, because he knows that in the end times, only those who did not give up the internal battle will remain. And that, my friend, is more powerful than it seems. Renunciation for an eternal purpose. Renouncing is not simply saying no to sin. It is giving up everything that, although it may seem good, hinders God's eternal purpose. The chosen face the shock of realizing that not every invitation is a blessing, nor every opportunity is God's will. Sometimes God asks for something that hurts, a childhood dream, a relationship, a well-structured plan. True Christianity demands surrender. And this surrender is often silent, without applause or recognition. Only those who live renunciation know what it is like to wake up with a broken heart and still say, "Thy will be done." The Bible is full of men and women who had to leave something behind to follow the Lord. Abraham left his land. Peter left his boats. Jesus left heaven. This renunciation, although it may seem like a loss, is an investment in what is eternal. The shocking secrets of the Word show that heaven is not built with what we accumulate, but with what we sacrifice for love of God. And yes, that goes against human logic. Christian doctrine speaks about denying oneself, taking up the cross, and following. But what few understand is that this cross is not just suffering, it is transformation. By renouncing something earthly, we receive something heavenly. By giving up superficial communion, we gain true intimacy with the Father. Religion may teach about blessings, but the teachings of Jesus reveal that the greatest blessing is to be molded in His image. This is frightening because it demands dying to one's own ego. And when you least expect it, you realize that that renunciation was, in fact, a deliverance. That closed door was protection. That friendship that dissolved was a weight that prevented your flight. God sees what we do not see, and that is why He asks for what seems unjust. Biblical fasting is not just about food, it is about giving up everything that nourishes the soul in the wrong way. Those who understand this begin to live on another spiritual level. It is unbelievable how the chosen learn with tears that eternity is worth more than any momentary pleasure. Paradise is reserved for those who understand that living with God is better than having everything without Him. And if renunciation is necessary, then so be it. Because the reward, my dear, is God Himself. Spiritual solitude and misunderstanding. There is a pain that is not physical, but it tears apart the soul of the chosen. Spiritual solitude. It does not arise from a lack of company, but from a lack of connection. Even when surrounded by people the chosen feel out of place. It is as if they speak another language, have a different vision, see what others do not. And that hurts. Even within the church itself, they may feel like strangers, for their longing is deeper, their cry more intense. The Bible describes this in so many moments. Elijah, after a great spiritual feat, felt alone and fled to the desert. Even there, God found him. It is this misunderstanding that reveals a different faith, a faith that disturbs, that confronts, that demands more. This pain originates in the mysteries of the Bible. After all, those who receive biblical revelations begin to live at another pace, another spiritual frequency. And the world, including the religious world, is not always ready for that. Often this solitude is fueled by biblical censorship, absolute truths that are stifled by systems of control and religious manipulation. The chosen feel that there is more, that there is something hidden behind the curtains. And when they try to share, they are misunderstood. Even Jesus was discredited in His own land. John the Baptist lived in the desert. The prophets were solitary not by choice, but by vocation. Being misunderstood is part of the calling. And those who understand this embrace solitude as part of the mission. Spiritual solitude is in fact a seal of authenticity. It is the mark of those who walk against the current. They are not interested in pleasing men, but in living according to the teachings of Jesus. They know that Jesus' cross does not attract crowds, it drives away the curious. It is unbelievable how this pain, when accepted, transforms into strength. The chosen learn to walk with God in the dark, without the need for an audience, without human approval. They find in God their communion, their comfort, their direction, and even without applause, without recognition, without understanding, they continue, because they know that heaven understands what the earth rejects, and it is that certainty that sustains them when everything seems to crumble. Waiting as a tool for spiritual shaping. Few pains are as heartbreaking as waiting. For God's chosen, time does not always seem to work in their favor. The days drag on. Promises seem distant, and God's silence weighs on the heart. But biblical study reveals that this time of waiting is, in fact, a sacred tool. It was so with David, who was anointed king and waited years to sit on the throne. It was so with Joseph, who dreamed big and went through prison before governing Egypt. The Bible teaches that the clock of heaven does not obey human despair. What the church often did not tell you is that waiting is the place where God shapes character and strengthens faith. During this wait, doubts, anguish, and even thoughts of giving up arise. The mind becomes a battleground where Satan tries to launch arrows of unbelief and murmuring. That is when Christian doctrine steps in, reminding us that God works behind the scenes, even when he seems silent. Biblical fasting, for example, is not just for seeking quick answers, but for learning to rest in God's will. Waiting teaches patience, dependence, and trust, three virtues that do not develop in comfort. The biblical secrets show that gold must pass through fire to be purified. And the chosen, well, they learn that the pain of waiting is often a disguised divine deliverance. It is frightening to realize how much we try to force situations, accelerate processes, and make hasty decisions when we do not understand God's timing. But those who were called to live the mysteries of the Bible learn, with tears and knees on the ground, that there is a time for everything. Communion grows in the wait. Spiritual discernment is sharpened, revelation deepens, and the heart, once anxious, begins to rest in the certainty that the Father does not fail. The Bible does not romanticize waiting, it values it. And when the promise is finally fulfilled, there is no room for pride, only for gratitude. Because the chosen understand everything that comes from God comes in the right time, in the right measure, and for the right purpose. Painful separations that reveal deliverance. The spiritual journey, as beautiful as it is, requires farewells that the heart is not always ready to endure. God's chosen, sooner or later, will need to let go of people, environments, and even projects that are no longer part of the divine plan. It is painful, without a doubt. But the Bible reveals that separation is often deliverance. Jesus, the Son of God himself, was betrayed by Judas, denied by Peter, and abandoned by the disciples at the most crucial moment. And yet, he continued. This shows us that not everyone who begins with us will go all the way. Religion may try to keep everything under control, but God's will is sovereign, and it cuts, separates, and redefines. The truth is that many connections that hurt us today were allowed by God to teach us, but were not meant to stay. It is unbelievable how the pain of a separation can be the beginning of a new spiritual phase. True communion is not built with just anyone. God separates his own, just as he separated the people of Israel from the neighboring nations. Some losses are, in fact, disguised victories. What once seemed like love was a bond. What once seemed like an alliance was an emotional prison. The biblical secrets show us that the narrow path requires lightness, and one cannot walk lightly with unnecessary emotional baggage. Biblical study encourages us to let go, knowing that what God removes, He also replaces with something better. And when the pain tightens, when longing hits, when the mind tries to understand the reason behind that separation, it is in that moment that faith is tested. The chosen learn that Jesus' cross was also a breaking point. There, everything changed. And to reach resurrection, one had to die first. Therefore, if something or someone is being taken out of your life, look with spiritual eyes. It may be frightening, it may seem unfair, but perhaps it is the hand of God Himself protecting you from something that only He sees. And sometimes deliverance comes in the form of separation, because in the end, the most powerful deliverances are not those we celebrate. They are the ones we will only understand when we are in paradise.